Whiskey the Process. Welcome, friends, to Whiskey Magazine The Process. Learn, sip, enjoy. This special edition is dedicated to one thing: the process, the journey from humble grain to glorious glass. We encourage you to join golfcask.com for free and read and have access to all of our publications. Enjoy! Whiskey is more than a drink. It's a story told through science, tradition, patience, and artistry. In this issue, you'll step inside that story. We'll pull back the curtain on each stage of whiskey's life, from the careful selection of grains to the magic of fermentation, the alchemy of distillation, the quiet transformation inside charred oak, and the final bottling where the journey becomes something we can all savor. Whether you're a seasoned whiskey lover or new to the world of fine spirits, you'll find a deeper appreciation for the craftsmanship behind every pour. So, pour yourself a dram, settle in, and let's begin. Editors. Note: first, we begin with the soul of whiskey itself, the quiet work inside the barrel, where science meets art and whiskey finds its true character. The art inside the barrel. Whiskey isn't just made, it's crafted, layer by layer, from grain to glass. In this special feature, we pull back the curtain on the process that turns raw ingredients into something worthy of your best pour. It starts with 4 humble grains: corn, rye, wheat, and malted barley, each leaving its own mark on the final spirit. From corn's soft sweetness to rye's spice, every grain holds a story. But before flavor ever hits the glass, those grains are milled, cooked, and fermented, transformed from starch to sugar, then sugar to alcohol, with yeast as the unsung hero. Then comes the still, whether a copper pot, a towering column, or a modern hybrid. Distillation is about refining, removing impurities while coaxing out the spirit's cleanest character. The still's shape and material matter more than most realize. Reflux isn't just science, it's art. But the real magic happens in the barrel. Over years in charred American white oak, whiskey absorbs flavor, color, and complexity. Heat-treated staves release vanillin, caramel, and spice. Char layers filter and soften, and oxygen transforms. It's not just extraction, it's oxidation, a slow dance between spirit and wood that builds depth. Where and how barrels age, rickhouse floor, climate, airflow, even barrel size, shapes every drop. A Texas summer or a 6th-floor Kentucky warehouse yields something wildly different than a cool, steady cellar. And yet, none of it matters if the liquid isn't carefully bottled and proofed, its final strength and clarity perfected. Whiskey is science, tradition, and innovation, often all in the same glass. In this issue, we invite you to go beyond the label and into the barrel, where whiskey's story isn't just told, it's aged. Of course, whiskey is best enjoyed in good company. That's why we invite you to connect with kindred spirits inside the Greens and Grain Society, where golf, whiskey, and community come together in perfect harmony. Join us, friend, where golf, whiskey, and community meet. Golf is more than a game, whiskey is more than a drink, and life is meant to be savored. Welcome to the Greens and Grain Society, where we celebrate the fusion of golf, whiskey, community, and adventure. Our society is built for those who appreciate the finer things in life: a well-struck iron, a perfectly aged pour, and the camaraderie of good company. With a strong footprint for online meetups and in-person gatherings throughout the year, our members connect across the country and beyond, sharing their love for the game and the glass. Here, we focus on what truly matters: slowing down and enjoying the game, savoring a great pour, spending time with humans being human. Whether you're a scratch golfer or a weekend warrior, a whiskey aficionado, or just whiskey curious, you belong here. Come for the game, stay for the stories, and raise a glass to the journey. Join us today because life, like golf and whiskey, is best enjoyed in good company. Cheers, the Greens and Grain Society. Before a barrel is even charred, before a still fires up, whiskey's story starts with four simple ingredients. Now, let's explore the grains that build its foundation. The four grains of whiskey: corn, wheat, rye, and barley. At the heart of whiskey lies one simple truth. It starts with grain. Whether you're sipping scotch, savoring Irish pot still, or nosing an American single malt, whiskey's foundation comes from starch-rich grains, converted to sugar, then to alcohol. Across the world, four grains dominate whiskey production: corn, wheat, rye, and malted barley. While mash bills and traditions vary, over 99% of the whiskey made globally uses one or a combination of these. Let's break them down. Corn. High in starch, corn is a sweet and efficient source of alcohol. As a distillate, it smells and tastes unmistakably like corn, sweet, sometimes grassy or floral. But don't expect to find bold corn flavor in your glass. Corn gets overshadowed during aging, especially in new oak barrels. What lingers is sweetness, not flavor, making corn the quiet workhorse in many whiskeys. Wheat. Wheat produces a soft, smooth, and mellow whiskey. It's often described as creamy, nutty, and subtly sweet, with faint notes of breakfast grains or baking spices. Though less punchy than rye, wheat adds a rounded softness to blends and single-grain whiskies alike, and its gentle profile holds up well even after aging. Rye. The boldest of the four, rye brings an herbal, spicy, and peppery edge. Classic descriptors include mint, dill, black pepper, and green spice cabinet aromas. Even in small quantities, rye makes itself known, lending a sharper, more aggressive personality to any whiskey it inhabits. Malted barley. The backbone of Scotch and Irish whiskies, and a key component in many others. It's prized not just for flavor, fruity, malty, lightly spicy, but also for its enzymes, which convert starch into fermentable sugars. While its aromas are more delicate than rye or wheat, malted barley can shine in used barrel aging, revealing its signature malty sweetness, soft fruit, and spice. In short, these four grains don't just build whiskey, they shape its soul. From sweetness to spice, softness to structure, the grain bill is your first clue to what you'll taste in the glass. Once the grains are chosen, the journey continues with milling, where the first physical transformation of whiskey begins. Milling, breaking down the grain. Once the grain is selected, it's time to break it down, literally. Milling is the process of crushing grain to expose more surface area, making its starches more accessible for conversion into sugar during cooking and fermentation. There are two main types of mills used in whiskey production: roller mills and hammer mills. A roller mill uses interlocking, grooved rollers that pull grain through and crush it between the teeth. It's a relatively gentle process that allows for controlled, consistent particle sizes. Think of it as methodical and efficient, great for preserving husks, which can help with filtration later. A hammer mill, on the other hand, is all about brute force. It uses high-speed rotating hammers, spinning at thousands of RPMs to pulverize the grain. As the grain is hammered into finer and finer particles, it's eventually small enough to pass through a sieve screen at the base. It's faster and more aggressive, producing a finer grind overall. Both methods are common in the industry, and choosing one over the other often comes down to the distiller's goals and equipment. Each has trade-offs. Hammer mills offer high efficiency and speed, but can produce flour like dust. Roller mills are more controlled and may preserve structure better for certain processes. But the key isn't just to crush, it's to crush just right. Grains are typically milled down to about the consistency of cornmeal. That size exposes enough surface area for starch to sugar conversion without creating problems during cooking. If you go too fine, like flour, you risk clumping or forming dough balls during the cook, which can lead to equipment issues and poor yields. Nobody wants a gummy mess in the cooker. In short, milling sets the stage for successful fermentation. It's a careful balance between particle size, surface area, and processability. Whether it's corn, wheat, rye, or barley, how it's milled directly affects how efficiently it ferments, and ultimately how your whiskey tastes in the glass. With the grain properly milled, it's time to cook. Here's where starch meets science, and where the foundation for fermentation is laid. Cooking the mash, turning grain into sugar. Once the grain has been milled, it's ready for the next crucial step in whiskey making, cooking. While every distillery has its own method, the goal is always the same. Convert starch into sugar, so yeast can later turn that sugar into alcohol. The process begins by filling the cooker with water and heating it to about 100 degrees Fahrenheit before adding grain, specifically corn, and the flavoring grain, wheat or rye. This warm temperature helps the grain blend smoothly into the water, similar to how flour mixes more easily into warm water than cold. From there, the temperature is raised to between 200 to 212 degrees Fahrenheit and held for about 30 to 45 minutes. This step is critical. It surpasses the gelatinization point of the grains, typically around 185 degrees Fahrenheit, which allows the starch inside the grain cells to swell, burst, and release into the water. This process, also called liquefaction, ensures the mash is loaded with accessible starch for the next step, enzyme conversion. NC starch has been released. The mash is cooled using either a jacketed cooker or internal cooling coils. When the temperature drops to around 145 degrees Fahrenheit, malted barley is added. This timing is key. Malted barley is rich in enzymes that convert starch to sugar, but those enzymes are sensitive to heat and start to degrade above 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Adding malt too early would kill the enzymes before they can do their job. Although enzymes act quickly, many conversions happen within minutes. Distillers often hold the mash at this temperature to maximize sugar production. Every bit of sugar means more potential alcohol in the final product. Finally, the mash is cooled to its fermentation set temperature, a target that can vary between distilleries and even by season. At this stage, distillers also check the pH, aiming for a slightly acidic range of 5.0 to 5.5, which is ideal for yeast health. Once everything is dialed in, the mash is pumped to the fermenter, now fully prepped with released starches and converted sugars, ready for fermentation to begin. From cooked mash to living spirit, next we dive into the remarkable world of fermentation, where yeast breathes life into whiskey. Fermentation in whiskey making, from mash to alcohol. Once the mash is prepared and cooled to the right temperature, it's transferred into a fermenter, the vessel where sugars are transformed into alcohol by yeast. There are two common types of fermenters based on material, stainless steel and wood. Stainless steel fermenters are widely used due to their ease of cleaning, customizable size and shape, and resistance to contamination. These are ideal for modern, scalable operations and allow distillers to sanitize them with live steam. Wooden fermenters, traditionally made from cypress, now often Douglas fir, are still in use at many historic distilleries. While wood doesn't impart flavor to the mash, it does come with challenges. Its natural texture, stave joints, knots, and seams, can trap mash and promote bacterial growth if not meticulously cleaned. Left unchecked, this can result in off flavors like vinegar, baby vomit, or sour funk. Because of this, cleaning and sterilization are critical, making stainless steel a more convenient option for many producers. What is yeast? Yeast is a single-celled fungus that feeds on sugar and outputs ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. The primary yeast strain used in whiskey making is Saccharomyces cerevisiae, the industry standard due to its efficiency, alcohol tolerance, and flavor production. Though yeast has been used in baking and brewing for over 7,000 years, our scientific understanding of it only dates back to Louis Pasteur in 1857, who discovered that yeast is responsible for fermentation. Since then, research into yeast strains has exploded, with modern distillers selecting specific strains based on their flavor profiles and operational performance. Unlike baker's yeast, which struggles in high alcohol environments and creates unwanted flavors. How yeast works. Once added to the cooled mash, yeast enters a three-phase life cycle. Lag phase, yeast adjusts to its environment. No sugar is consumed yet. Exponential, log, phase. Rapid growth begins. Yeast multiplies, consumes sugar, and produces alcohol and CO2. Stationary phase. The population levels off, but sugar consumption and alcohol production continue. Eventually, yeast enters the death phase, when nutrients are depleted and alcohol levels become too high for survival. During active fermentation, yeast reproduces by budding, creating new cells that break off from the mother. The fermentation process is exothermic, meaning it produces heat. This is manageable in small fermenters, like 250-gallon tanks. But in large commercial tanks, sometimes holding over 500,000 gallons, cooling systems are required. Even in freezing winter temperatures, ethanol plants may need chilled water jackets or coils to prevent overheating. The role of yeast in flavor. While the primary goal of fermentation is producing alcohol, yeast also creates a wide array of congeners, compounds responsible for flavor and aroma. These include esters, aldehydes, and higher alcohols. Each yeast strain produces its own unique blend of congeners, which means changing strains can significantly alter the whiskey's flavor profile. That's why most distilleries commit to a single yeast strain to maintain consistency in their spirit. Some may use multiple strains for different product lines, but each strain is carefully selected and used with precision. Fermentation temperatures matter. Fermentation temperature plays a major role in flavor development and yeast health. While it might seem efficient to ferment at high temperatures for faster turnaround, this can stress the yeast, leading to more unwanted compounds and less ethanol. Most whiskey fermentations are kept in the 80 to 90 degree Fahrenheit range and run for 3 to 5 days. Cooler, slower fermentations tend to yield better alcohol content and a cleaner congener profile. Yeast strains also differ in temperature tolerance. Whiskey strains used in Kentucky may struggle above 95 degrees Fahrenheit, while Caribbean rum producers need yeast that can handle well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit due to their hotter climates and outdoor fermentation. Each strain has its own operating range, influencing not only the flavor, but the fermentation strategy. In summary, fermentation is where the magic of whiskey begins, turning cooked grain into a living, bubbling mash filled with alcohol and flavor. Every element, vessel type, yeast strain, temperature, and timing, shapes the spirit that will eventually head to the still and, later, the barrel. It's biology, chemistry, and craftsmanship rolled into one beautiful, bubbling process. Fermentation gives us alcohol, but it's distillation that purifies it, refines it, and shapes it. Let's step into the heart of the distillery. Distillation, how whiskey gets its spirit. After fermentation, the alcohol-rich beer is ready for the still. Distillation separates alcohol and flavor, compounds from water, and heavier elements through heat and reflux. There are 3 main types of stills used in whiskey making: pot stills, column stills, and hybrid stills. Reflux, the key to distillation. Reflux is the process of vapor rising, condensing, and falling back into the still, allowing lighter, cleaner alcohols to move forward, while heavier compounds, like water and tails, are left behind. More reflux equals cleaner spirit and higher proof. This is why copper is such a prized still material. It provides an enormous amount of surface area at a microscopic level and helps remove sulfur compounds, which can give off rotten egg aromas. Over time, this process also thins the copper still walls, requiring regular maintenance checks. Pot stills, the traditional batch method. A pot still works by heating the beer until alcohol and other volatile compounds evaporate, rise through the swan's neck and line arm, and enter a condenser, often a copper coil surrounded by cold, running water. The cool water turns vapor back into liquid spirit. The still head, also called the onion or helmet, plays a big role in reflux. Its larger chamber, farther from the heat source, encourages repeated cycles of condensation and re-evaporation before alcohol escapes to the condenser. This means only lighter, cleaner alcohols make it over. Without the still head, you'd need multiple runs to achieve the same purity and proof. Pot stills are batch systems, meaning distillers must stop between runs to empty the still and reload it with a new batch of beer. While this limits output, it gives excellent control over the spirit's flavor profile. Column stills, continuous and efficient. A column still, also called a continuous still, works non-stop and can produce much larger volumes. Inside the tall still are dozens of trays, each acting like a miniature pot still. As live steam rises from the bottom and partially heated beer enters about 2/3 up, alcohol evaporates and rises tray by tray, while heavier compounds, water, grain solids, and tails, fall downward and exit as waste. As vapor rises, it repeatedly condenses on the trays and is forced through liquid layers. This produces tremendous reflux and results in a high-proof, clean spirit in a single pass. Despite all the internal microdistillations, the spirit exiting a column is still considered a first distillation. To complete the process, it moves to one of two systems, a thumper or a doubler. A thumper receives vapor directly from the column. Vapor is pushed below the liquid level inside the thumper and bubbles out, creating another round of reflux before the final condensation. A doubler first condenses the vapor into liquid, which is then reheated in a pot still style vessel. This redistills the spirit before it's cooled again and collected. Both methods serve as the second distillation step, but doublers are quieter and more commonly used than the thunderous, vibrating thumpers. Most large-scale bourbon is made on column stills with doublers. Hybrid stills, the versatile option. A hybrid still combines elements of pot and column stills, usually a pot base with a short column containing a few trays. These stills offer great flexibility. You can run them like a traditional pot still by turning the trays off. Use the trays for more reflux and higher proof in a single run. Hybrid stills are like the Swiss Army knife of whiskey making, ideal for small producers wanting to make a range of spirits without needing multiple setups. Why stills matter? Whether you're using a pot still for a richly flavored batch whiskey or a column still for a continuous flow of high-proof spirit, the design and material of your still profoundly shape the final product. From copper's role in cleaning sulfur to reflux determining purity, the mechanics of distillation are essential to how whiskey gets its character. And with that, distillation is complete. From here, it's time to meet the barrel, where whiskey transforms once again in oak. After the still, whiskey meets its truest partner, the oak barrel. Discover why white oak holds the key to aging whiskey into something extraordinary. Why white oak? The magic behind whiskey aging. When it comes to whiskey production, aging in oak barrels is where the spirit truly becomes whiskey. While grains and yeast lay the foundation, most of the flavor, some say 60% to 90%, is developed during barrel aging, especially in white oak. While any oak species is legally allowed, American white oak is overwhelmingly the wood of choice, used in over 99% of whiskey barrels. Historically, this was a matter of geography. White oak grows abundantly in Kentucky, and across the central US, early settlers used it for practical storage. But the wood's properties turned out to be ideal for aging spirits. White oak is watertight when properly cut, strong yet bendable, and contains just the right mix of flavor compounds like tannins, vanillin, and wood sugars, without the unpleasant resins or oils you'd find in evergreen species. French oak, by comparison, has 10 times more tannins, which can be overly bitter or drying. Toasting, charring, and the heat treatment. Before a barrel can be filled, it must undergo heat treatment. By law, bourbon barrels must be charred, but many distilleries also toast the staves beforehand. Toasting involves lower heat for a longer period, breaking down the oak's sugars and flavor compounds without destroying them. Charring is more intense, applying high heat for a short time, e.g., 20 to 30 seconds, to create a layer of carbon. Even if only charred, a natural red layer of toast forms just beneath the char. This layer is essential. It holds many of the flavors that get drawn into the whiskey during aging. Some distilleries deepen this toast before charring to maximize flavor extraction. Barrel char levels range from number 1 to number 4, with number 4 being the so-called alligator char, known for its cracked texture and deep carbon layer. The combination of toast and char defines how much vanillin, spice, and color is released over time. Barrel anatomy and entry proof. Once heat-treated, barrels are assembled without glue or nails, just precision-cut staves, metal hoops, and a drilled bunghole. When a distillery receives barrels from a cooperage, they must decide the entry proof, the alcohol content of the spirit going into the barrel. Legally, it cannot exceed 125 proof. Entry proof impacts flavor. Lower proof, e.g. 110, extracts more water-soluble compounds. Higher proof, closer to 125, draws out more alcohol-soluble flavors. At 100 proof, 50-50 water and alcohol, you'd get maximum extraction from both categories. But higher entry proofs also yield more bottles per barrel, which provides economic advantages, especially when proofing down to 80 for bottling. Once inside, the whiskey undergoes 3 major aging processes: additive, subtractive, and interactive. Additive seasonal temperature swings in places like Kentucky push the spirit in and out of the wood, pulling out vanillin, caramel, oak sugars, and tannins, essential for flavor and color. Subtractive. As whiskey passes through the char layer, impurities are filtered out by the carbon, much like a charcoal water filter. This char layer offers massive surface area. Just a quarter-sized chunk of char can equal 3 basketball courts of filtration space. Whiskey also evaporates over time, the angel's share, creating headspace filled with oxygen. Interactive oxygen in the barrel reacts with the spirit over time, triggering oxidation, a crucial, often overlooked process that creates complex flavors like cherry, walnut, leather, and tobacco. These notes weren't originally in the wood or the mash, they formed through chemical reactions over time. Age versus maturity. It's important to understand that age does not equal maturity. Age is simply how long a spirit has been in the barrel. Maturity is when a whiskey has fully integrated its flavors, balanced, complex, and expressive. A young whiskey might be technically older, but still taste underdeveloped. Meanwhile, a 6 to 8 year spirit might hit peak maturity, delivering more nuance and character than something that's been aging for decades. As the old saying goes, some spirits grow old, but not all grow up. Warehousing and aging, the environment that shapes whiskey. After distillation and barrel entry, whiskey's journey continues in the rickhouse, where the environment plays a massive role in shaping its flavor. From temperature swings to warehouse design, location, and even barrel size, the variables involved in aging are numerous and impactful. Floors, flavor, and microclimates. The first major influence is rickhouse structure, particularly the number of floors. In Kentucky summers, the top floors of a rickhouse can get blazing hot. In this heat, water evaporates faster than alcohol, causing the proof to rise and flavor profiles to become bold, spicy, and aggressive. Conversely, the lower floors stay cool and stable year-round, which promotes alcohol evaporation and results in smoother, more mellow whiskey with lower proof. Not only does floor level affect flavor, but barrel position within the floor, center aisle versus near the wall, creates microenvironments that influence aging. Historically, some distilleries rotated barrels for consistency, but today, most rely on flavor mapping to blend specific barrels for each brand expression. Maker's Mark is one of the few major distilleries that still rotates barrels once per aging cycle. Regional impact. Where a whiskey ages geographically also matters. Texas, for example, experiences long, hot, dry seasons. This leads to intense extraction and a bolder flavor profile, but also a higher angel's share, the loss of spirit due to evaporation. As a result, older aged bourbons are rare in regions with extreme heat, because much of the liquid is simply lost over time. Some Kentucky distilleries, like Buffalo Trace and Muchter's, use temperature-controlled warehouses, primarily employing steam heat in winter. By heating a cooled warehouse, they can simulate a second cycle of extraction and interaction, effectively achieving 2 years of flavor development in one. It's energy-intensive, but offers precise flavor control. Barrel aging is only part of the story. Where a whiskey matures, the heat, the air, the seasons, all leave fingerprints on the final spirit. Rickhouse versus palletized warehouses. Two main warehouse styles are used today. Traditional rickhouses stack barrels on their sides in multi-story wooden structures. Palletized warehouses store barrels upright, stacked on pallets up to 6 high, saving space and improving safety. Palletized storage reduces airflow and surface area for oxidation, especially since upright barrels expose a smaller surface area to oxygen. While distillers can compensate for airflow with fans, oxidation, the key to developing deeper, nuanced flavors, still depends on time and surface exposure. Palletized aging tends to slow the process, with Wild Turkey noting it took 20% longer to reach the same profile. Barrel size and craft distilling. In the rise of craft distilling, many producers experimented with smaller barrels, 5 to 30 gallons, to age quicker. While smaller barrels increase the liquid-to-surface ratio and speed up extraction, they don't accelerate oxidation, which is essential for developing complexity and layered flavors. Extraction can happen fast, but oxidation needs 2 to 8 years to create those beloved notes of leather, cherry, tobacco, and nuttiness. Spirits aged only in small barrels for short periods can taste rich, but often lack the subtlety of older, larger barrel-aged whiskey. Still, many distillers skillfully use small barrels to craft great whiskey. They simply produce different profiles. Experimental aging. Modern distillers are exploring alternative aging techniques, aging barrels on ships to mimic constant motion, using rotating racks, applying sound waves, light chambers, or vibrations. These methods alter extraction by increasing barrel interaction. But so far, no technique can accelerate oxidation. The best-known flavors in whiskey, those complex, layered, oxidized notes, still take time, wood, and patience to develop. Aging is not just about time, it's about what happens during that time. The barrel size, rickhouse floor, region, airflow, and even the angle a barrel is stored at all shape the whiskey's journey. While innovation is pushing the boundaries of flavor extraction, oxidation remains the key to depth and complexity, and that only comes with years in the barrel. Final thought. Aging is not just about time, it's about what happens during that time. The barrel size, rickhouse floor, region, airflow, and even the angle a barrel is stored at all shape the whiskey's journey. While innovation is pushing the boundaries of flavor extraction, oxidation remains the key to depth and complexity, and that only comes with years in the barrel. The takeaway? Great whiskey isn't just made, it's raised, 1 degree and 1 day at a time. Bring the experience to your club or whiskey gathering. Love golf, enjoy whiskey, let's bring them together. What we offer, virtual or in-person experiences. Meet online or host us at your club. Talk golf, sip whiskey, fun, engaging conversations on both. Guided tastings, explore bourbon, scotch, and more. Golf and whiskey round, play, sip, and learn. Perfect for golf clubs and tournaments, whiskey societies and private tastings, corporate and social events. Book your experience today. Contact at golfcask.com. After years of quiet transformation, it's time for whiskey's last rite of passage, bottling, where liquid becomes legend, ready for your glass. Bottling, the final step in whiskey's journey. After years spent developing deep flavors in oak barrels, whiskey's last stop before it reaches your glass is the bottling line. While bottling may seem simple compared to distillation or aging, it's a crucial step that affects consistency, clarity, and presentation. The first step is barrel selection. Some whiskies are single barrel releases, meaning they come from one specific cask with no blending. Others are mingled, often from dozens or even hundreds of barrels, to maintain a consistent flavor profile for a particular brand expression. Once the whiskey is dumped from the barrel, a process called dumping or emptying, it's typically filtered. This can range from light particle filtration to chill filtration, where the whiskey is cooled to near freezing to remove fatty acids, esters, and proteins that can cause cloudiness when the bottle is chilled. While some argue this affects mouthfeel and flavor, others prefer the clarity and visual appeal it brings. Next, producers must determine bottling strength. This is the proof, alcohol content, at which the whiskey is bottled. Some whiskies are barrel-proof or cask strength, meaning they go into the bottle at the exact strength they came out of the barrel, often 110 to 130 proof. Others are proofed down to a target, such as 100, 90, or 80 proof, by adding water. This decision balances flavor intensity with approachability and cost per bottle. Before bottling, some distilleries may do a final round of quality control and sensory checks, ensuring the whiskey smells, tastes, and looks just right. Once approved, it moves to the bottling line, where it's filled, corked, or capped, labeled, and often hand-inspected before packing. Packaging matters too. Labels, glass color, closures, and even bottle shape all play a role in branding. For premium releases, the packaging is part of the story. What's on the outside should hint at the craft inside. In the end, bottling is where whiskey becomes a product, leaving the world of rickhouses and stills and entering the hands of drinkers. It's the final transformation from a barrel-aged spirit into a finished experience, ready to be shared, savored, and celebrated. Finally, we celebrate the fruits of the process. The bottles our members are currently raising a glass to, some favorites, some surprises, all delicious. Members' top pours. High Westbury, Ted S. California GolfCask. Member since 2023, a go-to bourbon that's easy to sip with caramel, vanilla, and just enough spice to keep things interesting. Perfect for those dipping their toes into whiskey without diving straight into the deep end. Redbreast 12. Dave H. Pennsylvania GolfCask. Member 2024. This single pot still Irish whiskey brings a rich, creamy mouthfeel with notes of honey, nuts, and dried fruit. If you're used to Jameson but want to upgrade, this is your move. Penelope Wheated, Brian B. North Carolina GolfCask, member. Since 2023, a soft, sweet bourbon with notes of caramel, vanilla, and a touch of spice. The absence of rye in the mash bill makes it ultra-smooth, making it a perfect beginner bourbon. Lost Whiskey, Todd P. Pennsylvania GolfCask. Member since 2024, smooth without a great finish, plus Dave lost a golf bet and had to buy me a bottle. Wild Turkey 101 8-year Jimmy R. For those ready to embrace a higher proof bourbon, Wild Turkey 101 8-year is a fantastic option. It brings rich caramel, vanilla, spice, and a bold kick you can cut your teeth in. Thank you for joining us on this journey through whiskey's making. Every bottle holds 1,000 choices, 1,000 changes, and 1,000 quiet moments of craft. In future issues, we'll continue to explore, celebrate, and sip our way through the finest experiences whiskey and golf have to offer. Until then, learn, sip, enjoy. Cheers, the Whiskey Magazine and GolfCask teams. Let's toast this magazine. Here's to the journey, from the grain in the field, to the spirit in the still, to the magic in the barrel, and finally, the pour in your glass. To the patience it takes, the craft it demands, and the stories it holds. May we all be a little more aged, a little more refined, and a lot more worth savoring. One sip, one shot, one story at a time. Cheers to the process and to the great company along the way. Sláinte.